I think that we all know that truly it's more about the legend of Twinkle Khanna now, after the legend of Lakshmi Prasad.
After being on Coffee with Karan, I think.
I have to put this out. She refused my first film. I had a bit of a broken heart then. But in my heart, I said that one day I'm going to make this girl more famous than she is. And there it was this Sunday, the one television show. I've just decided to tell you, you may be number one. You ain't fighting the TRPs of Coffee with Karan this Sunday, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really sorry. No matter how brilliant she is, I finally made her famous. What do you have to say?
Thank you, Karan. But I think it was the joke about where you hide your mic that made me famous on Coffee with Karan.
I want to tell you that everybody who's messaged me after the show said, we've never seen you more stumped, more shocked, and more perplexed than you've ever been on this season. And it's true, because this is what's been happening since I've known her as a child. But secretly, as her closest friend from my years, I feel like this sense, like just today, Ranbir was like teasing me, and he was like, you're so hyper about this book launch. Like, it's more important to you than what we're doing right now. And I'm like, because hidden there is a lot of love and a lot of pride for all your achievement. And now the legend of Lakshmi Prasad, which is your bout with fiction, and all the 4 stories, which are immensely gorgeous. The storytelling
Is he
power.
going to stop, and do I get a chance?
No, because when you get a chance, you start talking about my hidden mind. So tell us about your first story, which is Noni Appa. Like, you went through beats to reach that final narrative.
So Salam Noni Appa is thanks to my grandmother, who dragged me to Jamaat Khanas my whole life, which she doesn't take me anymore because she claims that I can't do this Shajo Didar properly. I don't know what that is, but now she's ashamed of me. And it's a story I've been trying to write since I was 18, and I wrote it 3 times in 3 different versions. First, the protagonist was an 18-year-old girl, and then I wrote it again at 40 when the protagonist was 40, and now finally, the protagonist is Noni Appa, who's 68, and she finds love in the winter of her life. And that is what it is.
We, of course, would love to read a passage from that. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome none other than Shabana Azmi.
In the first week of January, Malika came to visit Noni Appa from London. She got her mother and aunt a suitcase filled with imported goodies, chocolates, perfume, hair dye, and of course, the one thing that every Indian woman pesters her NRI relatives for, undergarments from Marks and Spencer. Binny eagerly took the coveted items from Malika and dramatically declared, "These British are really third-rate people. I tell you, their only saving grace lies in their first-rate bras." That Friday, Binny dragged Malika to the Jamaat Khana, hoping some nice Ismaili boy would prostrate himself at her feet. In the car, Binny was chuckling away. "Malla, you know, when your father passed away, Appa was not that old, just close to 50. She would go to the Jamaat Khana in her tightly draped sari and her pink lipstick." Noni Appa interrupted. "Again this story, Binny, how many times?" Binny laughed, and ignoring her sister's protests, continued, "Arey, let me say what I want. So all the men in the Jamaat Khana would look at her and keep trying to say, 'Ya Ali, Madad,' and then when they would go completely out of control, they would find sources to." Malika giggled. "What does out of control mean, Binny Masi? What would they do? Explode in their pants?" And Noni Appa, horrified, almost banged into the auto rickshaw that had suddenly halted in front of her. "Chee, not dirty like that. They would send proposal, that's all. And after that, your mother, always such a prude with her constant, 'No, Binny, I don't want to get a bad reputation,' would never even greet them back," said a giggling Binny. "But I think things have changed. If you really want to know what out of control is, Malla, then you have to look at your mother. These days, she's panting all over that yoga teacher, her boyfriend, Anandji." And imitating her sister with a wobbly falsetto voice, Binny continued, "Anandji, have a whiskey today. The weather is perfect for it." Turning that poor vegetarian Guju Bhai to an alcoholic, that also on my whiskey. Malika exclaimed, "Mom, you didn't tell me all this." Noni Appa, wanting to strangle her sister, said, "Ya Ali, it's nothing like that. Yes, I offered him a drink, and so sometimes he has one now when we play. Your Masi hates cards, so what should I do? Just keep playing by myself?" But the good-natured ribbing in the car didn't stop. And since Noni Appa could not turn her hearing aid off while driving, she just had to bear with her family, her eyebrows raised in exasperation, shaking her head at their sly digs. Wonderful. Thank you.
Now, very excitedly, the first story that I read in your series of 4 short stories was The Legend of Lakshmi Prasad. I remember reading it, and very secretly, I felt like there's a film here as well. Like, I felt very strongly as a filmmaker, which is something that we never really spoke about. But I felt very strongly because it was a story of triumph. It was a story of progression. It was a story of a young girl really fulfilling her dreams in the best possible manner. To me, it was one of the best of the series. What do you have to say?
It was a story that when I was writing The Legend of Lakshmi Prasad, halfway through I started feeling that my editor will murder me. She'll say, it's not your Mrs. Funnybones voice, which is apparently some, I don't know, it's like I'm possessed by this ghost that goes on. But, and I wanted to give it up, but I finished it and I sent it to her. And as luck would have it, she said, it's perfect. And then the story that I actually sent her, which I thought was perfect, and I said, I've nailed it. She said, you've nailed it so many times that it's full of holes. And she sent it back to me to redo. The Legend of Lakshmi Prasad is a story of a simple village girl who saves her community and the women in her community by a radical idea. And that's basically the core.
Well, very, very happily and excitedly, we have someone who's had a journey of her own to read a passage from The Legend of Lakshmi Prasad, from not knowing who the president of the country is to emerging as the strongest voice as a female actor of her generation. I was trying to give you a dramatic introduction, Alia. She just broke it.
I want to interrupt him. Since he's asked you this about the president, Karan, I want to ask you something. Can you please tell me what is a
I'll pay you 501,000 rupees. Just shut up.
Just tell me, what is a full form of MNS? Just answer that. That's one thing.
I know what PMS is, and that's what I'm going through right now. That is what I'm going through right now. Anyway, thank you. I will not be answering any of your questions. I was going to say that she's had...
See, he did not know. Just rest easy. He doesn't know everything.
I know. I don't want to say anything politically correct or politically incorrect. I want to be silent. That is my stance these days. If it's possible, I'm maintaining a low profile.
Yes, very low.
That was not meant to be a joke. As I was saying, The Legend of Lakshmi Prasad talks about the triumph of a girl, and I truly believe this young child has triumphed from where she was and where she is today. I'm proud of her because she is my baby legend. I love you, Alia Bhatt. Please come on stage.
Yes, there should be a disclaimer that I'm terribly nervous. I don't think I was so nervous before giving my first shot for my first film. Karan.
Yeah, no, I know. I feel
very
you.
Fast. Dup, 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 dup. But I just want to say thank you for having me here. It's a very intelligent room. And a very wise room. I'm going to try and read very well. Bijendra Prasad was very fond of his little daughter. He always told her that she reminded him of her grandmother. They had the same narrow hands and long face, the gap between the tip of the nose and the lips disproportionately large, but pleasing all the same. On balmy afternoons, he would sit with her after lunch and tell her stories from the Ramayana. One day he told her about Shravan Kumar, who looked after his blind parents, spending his whole life serving them. Engrossed in the story, he murmured, "That is why a son is so important, for his old parents to lean on. With daughters, all our savings go away in giving and giving." Lakshmi, now 16, understood that he was talking about Sukruti, the intermittent demands by her in-laws and the last year for more dowry, or gifts as they called it. But she didn't ask him about it. Just at the mention of her sister's name, her father's mouth would tighten, and he would rub his bony collarbone wearily and say, "Sukruti is all right. Everything is all right. It is manageable." Till the day it wasn't, and a sunken-eyed Sukruti, her skin stretched like paper over each protruding rib, returned home, holding the gifts her in-laws had given her in return, burns on her back from boiling water and hot pans. Sukruti was back, and as they also discovered a few months later, looking at her growing stomach, she had not come back alone. They sent news of her pregnancy to her husband in Tulsipur, but no one came to take her back.
Now, we talk about The Sanitary Man, which, of course, there's so much conversation about it by virtue of its title and also of the journey. What was your experience of how you discovered this story?
So, The Sanitary Man is based on Muruganatham Arunachalam. I call him Muruga because my tongue trips over his name and also because he's a friend now. He is the inventor of the low-cost sanitary pad making machine, and he works tirelessly to dispel taboos about menstruation, and he's a very funny guy. He has these one-liners. He doesn't take himself very seriously or his work in that manner where there's a certain whimsy about him. And I discovered him. I was doing some research for a column on menstruation, and I stumbled upon his story, and immediately it gripped me. This was something that the world needed to know. I began chasing him, but he was very evasive. And then finally, I got his number from one of my friends there who does TED Talks. And I called him. And first he told me, I actually don't talk to men, I only talk to women. And I was taken aback. I was like, why, what is that? So he said, no, by the time I explain to a man what I'm doing, half an hour's gone by.
Right.
And then I met him, and he said, you know, a lot of people have been writing to me. Abhay Deol has written to me. Some Akshay Khanna has written to me. So I said, no, that's Akshay Kumar, and he's my husband. So he was, you know, kind of all right. And then finally, after lengthy interviews, he agreed to let me fictionalize his story.
Any particular reason why we requested Ranbir Kapoor to tell this story?
Because he is obsessed with sanitary napkins, and your last movie, you made him obsessed with love, unrequited love, poor thing. So let's call him on stage.
I'm trying to find the connection between unrequited love and a sanitary napkin. We'll hold that thought and, of course, call Ranbir Kapoor to read an excerpt from The Sanitary Man.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Twinkle, congratulations on your juggernaut of a book. Plug-in.
Juggernaut of a book.
When I was asked to read a passage from the book, I was really excited, and I messaged Twinkle saying that I'll bring my bestest English. And Pat came a reply saying that, don't worry, his English is as bad as yours. So just come and read. So I'm asked to read a passage from The Sanitary Man and a Sacred Land. But before that, I just want to read something which is on the third page of the book, which goes like, for Akshay. Each time there is a power cut, you, my friend, always have a flashlight handy. Prashant Batra submitted his story to The Guardian titled, The First Man to Wear a Sanitary Napkin. It was a 4-page article chronicling Bablu Kewat's journey from Mohana to Indore. And with that, troops of ruddy-faced journalists wielding straw hats and bottled water, along with the dictaphones, began descending on Bablu Kewat's workshop from all over the world. The Times of India was the first Indian newspaper to feature Bablu Kewat and his unique invention. A half-page story on page 6, sandwiched between an advertisement of Syntex water storage tanks and an announcement that wished Sardar Ranga Singh a very jolly birthday, Sarji. Bablu Kewat had started getting famous. There were television interviews where poker-faced anchors, not quite focusing on the work he was doing, with non-profit and women's group, kept trying to draw out salacious details of him wearing a pad and leaking blood all over himself. He was invited to speak at universities and companies and conferences across the country. Bablu found himself enjoying these talks. There was one rather memorable experience in Bhopal. It was a packed hall with a panel of dignitaries from around the world and attended by the Minister of Commerce, Industry and Employment. Bablu began his talk by pulling out a sanitary napkin from his pocket and waving it in front of the startled guest, asking, how many men have touched a sanitary pad in their life? When no one responded, he walked up to the minister and said, well, sir, here is your chance. Come, hold this. I promise it won't bite. The startled minister looked helplessly around, waiting for someone to rescue him, and with no escape in sight, gingerly took the sanitary pad in his hand. Bablu continued, You're feeling embarrassed holding that pad, aren't you, sir? This shame in discussing menstruation, in holding a sanitary pad, is one of the biggest hurdles we face. It is as if menstruation is not a natural function, but a sin that women unwillingly commit through their uterus and have to hide away from prying eyes, lest they be declared guilty of the crime of bleeding. This shame is the reason why women take their stained pieces of cloth, wash them secretively, and hang them to dry in places where even the rays of sun cannot spot them. Then they end up using those moldy, bacteria-laden pieces of fabric and get diseases. Let us all refuse to be part of this game of shame because it is nothing but a losing game for all humanity. The audience was spellbound and couldn't stop clapping. Taking his sanitary pad back from the hapless minister's hands, Bablu added with a twinkle in his eye. And I would like to end my speech by thanking women and the menstrual cycles. Without them, this talk, along with our very existence, would not be possible. Later, laughing about the event, he confessed to Sarita. Sarita ji, I told them only 10% of women in India used a sanitary pad. Actually, I fudged the number. It is only 5%. I just added 5% more on stage because I did not want to embarrass Bharat Mata so much in front of all the foreigners.